Well, good afternoon. Too early. Good afternoon again. Welcome to Nature Folklore. It's 27th of March 2022. I'll try again. Well, thank you all for joining me for our weekly time of exploring our nature-centered folklore, connecting this within your favorite sanctuary space. And I hope you've got a beautiful sunny day like we have here, and expressing your inspired visions from your sanctuary through your poetry, writing, art, craft, performance, and problem solving. Now, today is the final of our series, part 5, and we're rounding up with tree and water folklore. It's a lovely day here in Ireland. I think it's the warmest on this date for over 20 years, I think. So not many Irish people are going to be joining us, not live on this session. They're going to be in the woods or the beach. And I kind of wish I had set up outside, but unfortunately, this was our clock change. I could have done with the extra hour, and this episode actually took quite a bit of putting together. So I didn't have the time or the labor to get out into the one last broadcast in the middle of the tree labyrinth. So sorry we haven't managed that this time. Maybe another day the new owners will allow that. Anyway, this is a mammoth session. I'm probably going to be on for 2 hours. Very important stuff, I think. It's also important to point out that I forgot last Sunday, it was National Tree Week here in Ireland. It started last Sunday and it finished yesterday. So sorry, I should have mentioned that. So that's the reason we got the tree series. One of the reasons the tree series has been on at this time. But this year it wasn't very outdoor active. There's still this COVID around in abundance. So it's not like Tree Week used to be, when we used to always be out and about doing projects. Most of the events were online. And then last Monday, it was actually International Day of the Forest as well. And that was overshadowed by being International Poetry Day as well. Now, I think one lesson I've learned is that every day should be a woodland day, really. Don't you agree? Certainly. And also, moving from the Monday to the Tuesday, it was World Water Day. And I think every day should be a World Water Day as well. Anyway, we have a lovely guest. Let's go through the wonderful guests. We got Eileen Monahan, who's going to kick off for us with a few of her lovely poems. There she is with a great range of books. She does children's books as well. And we got Anne back, Anne Baldwin, absolutely delight. She's in the backstage at the moment. There's her amongst the gardens. Absolutely phenomenal with her gardening there. And Edward Durand, we got him. He's got a couple of own poems for us. And one I'm very excited about, we got Sarah Humble of All Is Well. And she is a contacts and content facilitator for the Ferry Council of Ireland, which is an online hub. I'll talk about that a bit. And we got Margie, All Is Water. Most people will be familiar with Sarah Humble with her Facebook group, All Is Water. Beautiful group to follow through if you can. And we got Margie Dunn, beautiful painter. But she's not actually going to be sharing some paintings with us. She's actually got a bit of a story for us. As usual, these nature folklore sessions and videos, the tree sanctuary support, are all brought to you due to the support of our subscribers, which I so glad for every week, because that's what keeps me on the air, so I can pay my subscriptions and expenses. That's the listing there to help out there. Also the PayPal donators as well. And some subscribers be live with us today or watching later. So thank you for keeping up and joining in and being part of this community that makes it possible. So let's see if we do have some early birds here that are actually in from the sun, or maybe watching this on the beach or whatever they're doing. Well, Anne's here because I see her in the back room there, and there she is. Hello, everybody. Woodland Day. And we've got Shannon. We got Shelley Gooch, good day from John. Sunny, chilly Wisconsin. Sorry, the messages are slow coming up because I think it's because you're flying the messages in yourself. They're really coming in thick and fast. So Shannon, been trying to get your message up for a minute or so. There we go, Shannon. Let's see. Always delighted. Thank you, Shannon, Michaela, Dory Smith, Elizabeth Flynn. So we got someone from Ireland here. You must be in your greenhouse watching. Oh boy, that'd be so hot if you're out in the greenhouse. And Terry Slack, excellent lineup. Terry Slack, Hardwick, Shell Gooch, I see has popped in. Good day. Oh, yeah, we've mentioned. Sherry, definitely. Sherry Murphy, everyone. Lovely in Maine today. It's great. And then Terry is from Maryland, USA. I think I've sort of catch up, and more are going to be coming in as I start speaking again, I'm sure. I haven't got as many photos as I would have liked for this show. One, because the hour has been knocked off, and some other distractions, because this has been unusually beautiful weather that we've had for a few days here in Ireland. So forgive the reduction in photographs and hope you don't mind my voice, but the guests have got a beautiful presentation today. I had planned to round up this tree season series with a session of imaginative and fun-packed folklore. But after amazing chats with Sarah Humble, who we got later, there she is again with some flowers, and Owen Connaughton of Gaelic Woodland Project. We had him on a couple of weeks ago, I think. Oh, Elizabeth Flynn, something. Yes, I'm in the greenhouse sowing seeds. Yeah, the soil's still cold. We got beautiful sunny weather, but the weather forecast when I'm going to be broadcasting with you next week is going to be very low, very cold. So I bet we'll get a big live audience then. Anyway, I was just saying, I had these chats with Sarah and Owen, and it really got me thinking. And also, I give some honor to my own son, Holly, who gave me a lot of the inspiration. I should have a photo of him here somewhere. I did have. I hope it's not lost. I didn't get the perfect. I would have loved to have had one of him in the woods, but there he is. He's in Scotland, as you can gather from the picture. And he doesn't realize how much inspiration he is through what he does. He more or less is hands-on. He's not online. He's generally hands-on doing the stuff that I talk about on Sundays. And so that's how he's an inspiration. But rather than tell water and tree folklore stories this time around, I'm going to focus more on an essential, useful purpose of actually using the folklore that I share with you. And this is when it's integrated into our uses, care and management of both water, trees and your woodlands. Now, when I was first at school, excuse me, I'm going dry. It must be the heat. When I was a lad at school, I'm talking about infant school, just joining school, the education then seemed to be more about stories, songs, and how to look at and how to sense things. And this was all before the education moved into actually learning how to do things like reading, writing, make things, and solve things. I gather Steiner schools pretty much follow that policy, but the rural schools, well, the school that I was in, that was the way they did things as well. Spent the first year or so just sensing things and really getting into the stories and really getting the imagination going. And that's why I open every nature folklore session like I do, because those three steps, those three pillars are still with me right from when I was at infant school days. And that's when we were learning how to do things that was in a style that perhaps I feel has become known as apprenticeship. We were not doing things from books or YouTube videos during our first education years. We were being shown things and encouraged to have a go at doing things and to learn from our errors combined with encouragement. There wasn't any of this, you idiot, kind of attitude. It was all very encouraging because it was all part of the teaching. And I suppose examples of things that we did in the infant school as we started getting more hands-on, there were things like we had a pottery kiln, we did some woodwork, gardening, food prep, And we even played at shopping. We had a little school shop. So, it took turns being the storekeeper and buying. That was how, I suppose, we learned how basic math. But how much of that former education I had in early years, how much of that still exists? You can mention that in comments. How much are you aware of that existing? And I wonder now when, I often, I'm sure you do, see a 3-year-old, give them an iPad to play with. And then they get their own phone by the time they're 5 or 6 years old. It seems that they've been deprived of that sensing education that leads into that sense of hands-on apprenticeship. So this tends to show me that the 3 pillars that I was first taught at school, they may be eroded away. And as I start off with the show here, I talk about using the folklore. That's what sets your imagination. In the school, it was the stories and the songs. That was the folklore. And then you're in your sanctuary space, your place of sort of synthesizing all this. And then you put it all together into your apprenticeship because you've got these visions you've been inspired of. And those are the things you want to write about, draw about, make things around, and so forth. Has all that eroded away? Is it eroding away? Have we lost the traditions of mythological folklore and apprenticeship? And that's what I say about Holly. He takes groups of children out and he mixes the two. He gets their minds wandering and work on their vision to work out how to do things. And it's all about trusting and accepting risk. The risk is being taken out. That's where it's regarded as risky if you use your imagination because you sort of go beyond boundaries. So, to me, the traditions and mythological folklore and the apprenticeship, it's all guiding our way, building up our wisdom, building up our skill crafts. And this is why authorities are such an arse these days, because they've lost that. I think hardly any people in administration grew up through traditions of visual storytelling and apprenticeship. Seems their backgrounds may be church books, university reading these days, and also what they now can learn on YouTube and Twitter. But during this Nature Folklore session, I've decided to round up this tree season series through introducing how folklore, along with apprenticeship, can help us to form beautifully integrated decisions. Now, regarding management and use of our vital, sacred, and essential water and woodland resources, I'll bring a nice picture up for that. That's our local well, by the way. Let's start off with our first poetic guest today. It's Eileen Monahan. Let's locate where I've got her video. She isn't with us live. I've got a video for her. She sent me 7 poems, I think. And I'm going to share 3 or 4 of them right now. And Eileen, she's a very prolific children's book writer. She's full of imagination. I should have something on that. There we go. Let's see if I can find her. There you go. This is a lovely book of hers, The Dreamsmith. Actually, that's an adult book. But she's got one called, I can barely pronounce it, Recolas Pereras. Let's try again. Recola Hesperus. No, I can't get it. Recola Hesperus. I wish I got that on the screen. You would have done better than me from that. Recola Hesperus. Brilliant title. How she got that, I don't know. I have to ask her sometimes. And she has a collection of poetry. And as I say, I think it's 3 or 4 in this section. I'm not sure that I'm going to play you just now. So here's Eileen Monahan. And I've got the video of her with a few of her poems, very short poems, extremely short. She hasn't put a setting, but you'll get the feel for them. So this is Eileen Monahan.
Hello, my name is Eileen Monahan. This is my poem about the horse chestnut. Tall, magnificent tree, in splendour and beauty, looking over the country for everyone to see. You show the way in the month of May, with white candle display of flowers to greet the day. Autumn comes, summer lingers, changing colour of leafy fingers. Spiky balls open for the stringers, preparing conkers for hardy swingers. This is my poem about the mountain ash or rowan tree. O mountain ash or rowan tree, you're magical for those who see you blooming in rocky places where you love to be. Your leaves like delicate feathers, bright green in sunny weathers, clusters of white flower treasures, turning to blood-red berries. You are strong and give protection. Birds and bees fly in your direction. People regard you with affection. We feel a deep connection. The spindle tree. Your hidden beauty grows until the summertime slows. Green flowers turn to pinky rose, opening, orange seeds expose. Leaves become crimson and gold. Your outfit is colourful and bold. Birds love the berries from days of old. Poisonous to people, we are told. Your hardwood has been used for ages, for pipe stems, skewers and bird cages. Wool spun on spindles in cottages give country women well-earned wages. The hazel tree. Hardy hazel lives under canopies of oak and ash and woodland trees. In spring your lamb's tails please, yellow catkins sway in the breeze. As summer wanes to nut season, squirrels and birds need no reason to eat hazelnuts without ceasing. They are nutritious nuts to feast on. You can be coppers to regrow in. Thin branches that people know are easily woven with a flow for buildings, fences, pots and so.
Thanks very much, Eileen. And that's a selection of some of her tree poems. And I'm going to broadcast the rest for you in 2 Sundays' time. So thank you, Eileen. She hasn't come on with us yet. Claire has come on with us. I wonder if you're outdoors in the and watching this on the jolly outdoors that Claire has where she lives. And thank you, Anne, for saying that. Love of each tree comes through. That was very peaceful, wasn't it, through your words and your voice. Now, what I'm going to speak about is really, it's an island matter, but it's an issue that's, I think every country in the world must be facing right now. There's a few more compliments coming in. What a beautiful selection, says Terry Slack about Eileen, and Claire loved that, and Sherry as well. So thank you very much for your compliments for Eileen there. Maybe you should be on board with us shortly. That's brilliant. As I was saying, this is an island matter that I'm going to be chatting on. And but I think it affects every country in the world now. It's a big issue, and it's something that's localized. What I'm about to share here is my own interpretation of a Gaelic woodland project. We had one on a couple of weeks ago with the ashen trees, and they explained the Gaelic woodland project, which is mainly a project in the middle of Ireland, in the old Mead in Meath. But on the side of it, this is something else that they're doing. And this is something that Owen presented during consultations of the Common Agricultural Policy in Ireland as it was being assembled last year, November 2021. And the issue is that just like with energy, there is an increasing demand on our water, coupled with deteriorating quality because of the extra demand. For some reason, we're choosing more consumables than ever before that actually require more water to produce those consumables in their production. Just like what I'm doing now is going through a data center, and that's taking up more power as well. But the deterioration of water quality in lakes, rivers, and eventually underground streams as they come up in our sacred wells, the holy wells, that's included as well. This obviously poses not only a risk to our health, but actually our entire human existence. And despite our current best efforts, I believe we can't protect our waters using the current government policies and laws. So this is a radical episode. I hope you don't mind me being a little bit on the political, but I'm going to give you some you can actually do yourself and the locality and integrating the folklore that we cover each Sunday. Now, my opinion is that this water damage has occurred through the centralization of water management and its supply. In Ireland, that's happened. We got Irish Water that centralised our water. It's taken it away from local authorities. It's all centred around Dublin now. And I don't think it's worked very well yet, not here. And I think a lot of countries where the water's getting centralised, there's a similar problem. I prefer the more sustainable, watchable, and more respected local water authorities. And we're very fortunate here at Carrowcrory, because we get our local water through a local group water scheme. And I know some of you are actually more fortunate because you've got crystal clear wells on your land. So you're getting your water from your underground wells. But of course, there is a bit of a, the water, where's that coming from? So there's a concern of where that supply comes from. And some people, I know even we got neighbours here that do this, they've got carefully looked after rainwater collection, because maybe not this time of year, but Ireland does have a lot of rain that can be collected by people. Now, if something goes wrong with our local group water, one thing I love is you can phone off and say, hey, Seamus, how about it? Can you get this sorted? But with Irish Water, you got to phone through. You press 1 to 8 for things you don't care a rat's ass about. And eventually you get to a voice reading from a script from someone from the Philippines or India or similar. Now, I suppose I better retract that. Sorry to Irish Water, and sorry to anyone in the Philippines and India that might have offended. But by saying that, I think you get the metaphor, a sense of metaphor of what happens when we try to get service from a centralized network. Now, with water, I'm confident that we could still handle management of water well if we could gather much more local community support to look after it. Now, to do this, I believe more visionary nature-based actions and many more people, well, they may not, nature-based actions, many people may not be used to that anymore. Actually, they're not. They're very detached. I think a lot of people are detached from the lifestyle concepts that I was talking about when I started primary school. And this is one area that I feel stories of folklore can really help to set the scene, set the imagination and the vision, and perhaps start to reset a living culture that has more respect for its surroundings and its resources. Now, I also feel that any nature-based actions must involve, I got some pretty pictures, I better start showing them up in here. This one, if the mouse will let me. There we go. Get into integrated management going on. There we go. That's familiar. Claire will be familiar with that one. That's by the Boyne. She'll probably know where that is. But I feel that any nature-based action may involve integrating local trees and woodland management with the local water management. And this is what I'm going to be talking about. Catching water from rainfall and from where water naturally flows is the basis of any water management plan. It doesn't matter if it's local or centralized. That's where the water comes from. Now, any water catchment area, I feel, could also include caring, sensitive management of local trees and woodlands together. Sorry, I'm trying to get another picture up. And any local trees and water management plan combined must also include a strong natural human relationship with the natural environment too. I emphasized something like this last week during the Tree Sanctuary edition, where we do this in a small scale, maybe in our garden, or if we're in an apartment with a bunch of our local people with a local project, a small local project for sanctuary. Now, if we are focused on protecting our waterways in all its forms, when I'm talking about streams, ponds, spring wells, lochs, and rivers, I feel we also need to sustain a harmonized relationship with both our woodlands and our woodland water supplies, doing it all together, not one separated from the other. Now, this means matching woodland needs with our water management needs. And let's have another pretty picture where he shows the two together. Some water and woodland there. There's a lot of water there. And through this, I believe that doing so, we can achieve better natural forest cover anyway. And while we're looking after water, we get wonderful ecological forest management results as well. I'm getting this is becoming quite a lecture, isn't it? Anyway, this means we could easily establish more woodlands. And having more woodlands, what does that do? We would end up storing more carbon and provide contributions to doing something for climate change concerns. Now, more important, I feel, is that having extra natural trees, having a presence of more natural trees, this increases our recovery, local recovery of the lost biodiversity that's happening everywhere. And I'm confident that sustainable action with the care of trees and water together would dramatically increase our farm and garden crop yields as well. And not only increase the yields, but the nourishment that's within the crops that are harvested. Now, within Ireland, 2/3 of island land is agricultural management. It's a huge industry here, and a huge amount of it is exported. It's said that with the 4.5 million, I suppose with Ukrainians, it'll be up to 5 very soon. Ireland can feed something like 38 to 40 million people. That's why so much is exported. Now, this may well be the same statistic in other countries, especially in agricultural states, for instance, in the USA. So this may be true where you live as well. But increasing corporate agriculture, I feel, has wiped out the traditional ways of farming, especially crop rotation. That seems to have been totally wiped out. And it's cutting corners like that from traditional farming ways that I think is putting pressure on the Irish landscape, on landscapes everywhere, really. So we end up with fertilizer, slurry, silt, chemicals, pathogens. All this is running off from the fields, flowing into the water, flowing into the streams, the rivers and the lakes, and especially after heavy rain. And this is all gradually polluting our water to a state, I think, towards a state of no return. This is getting very critical. Now, much of this damage is caused by the population of cattle. Is an aerial view. This is sort of thing goes on. The cattle are up by the waterside. They're trampling away. Often it's more cattle than this. Of course, they need water. They're trying to get to the water to drink. But by doing so, they're actually dragging a lot of extra effluent into the water. Now, what I'm going to talk about now is a suggested practical and sacred sustainable action. And it can be applied hugely to reduce this runoff pollution. And it does include storytelling and visionary contemplating. The storytelling and visionary contemplation is the essential foundation for this to work. So just like I suggest at the start of every Nature Folklore edition, this is involving a symbiotic relationship between trees, water, and other plants as well. And there's a buzz phrase. It's called Riparian buffer zone. Sorry, I haven't put that ready to put that on the screen. Riparian, riparian buffer zones, however you like to pronounce it. Now, a riparian used to be a description of any nature water flow. There you go. There's a lovely picture. I think that's the Boyne as well, just flowing along there with its kayaker. So that the description of that water flowing, that's riparian. And then what developed after that was a buzz phrase, riparian forests. And this would describe the woodland growing beside the water, a bit like in the picture behind me. And excuse me. And now we have the extended buzz phrase of riparian buffer zones. Before I explain what riparian buffer zones are, I think let's get to our next guest. And it's lovely that we have excuse me, I'm going to have to get the water. It's the lovely Anne Baldwin, and she's pleasantly waiting in the background. Prolific gardener, a spiritual director, and passionate poet. And today Anne's going to share a poem that gets right into the roots of what I'm about to talk about. Says this is appropriate time for me to take a break from my lecturing. So I'm going to introduce Anne. Let's see if we can get her. I'll put the headphones on and get her into action. And I've got to line up. We do the same format. We have some photos with the lines of her poem. And let's first say hello. There. Got to line up. We do the same. Oh, there we go. And Anne's got me in the background. We have some photos with the lines of her poem. And let's first say hello. Got to line up. We do the same. Oh, there we go. And Anne's got me in the background. I think we got some background there. Hey, good morning.
We do this. Oh, there we go.
I think last week you might have to say the poem, and I'll bring the lines up with the photographs. You might have to say the poem.
There,
I'll bring the lines up. Yeah, this is like a moon landing.
Can you hear me, John?
Oh,
You
very
might
well.
have to say the poem.
There. Can you hear me now, John?
If I say something, you're going to be echoing in 10 seconds.
See, I can't hear you when I'm on the StreamYard. Can you hear me now, John?
You might
If
have
I say
needed
something, you're going to be
headphones.
echoing in 10 seconds.
See, I can't hear you when I'm on the StreamYard. Can you hear me now, John?
If I say
Needed
something, you're going to be
headphones.
echoing in 10 seconds.
See, I can't hear you when I'm on the StreamYard. Can you hear me now? I'm just going to talk and see if you can. Okay. So this is.
Sorry.
Just nod your head. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Got it. So you're riparian buffers, John. I used to work and was paid by the, it was called the Game Commission. It was the Hunting Commission of Pennsylvania to encourage farmers to plant trees along streams. That was my riparian buffer work.
Oh, lovely.
This poem came out of a couple years ago. We were in the start of the pandemic. A good friend was dying and I was attending to her death. It was a very difficult, long drawn out death. And we had the new election coming up in the States. So there was a lot of angst. There was a lot of what felt chaotic going on in my life. So I went over to the woods that are nearby and looking up at those tall trees. And then this is the poem that came out of that, entitled Giant's Toes. What keeps them standing against the odds of gravity and wind and rain, of eagles' nests and woodpeckers' excavations and human intrusions? What anchors them in tumultuous times? Branches whipping wildly, their trunks swaying to the rhythm of the wind as storms seem bent on destruction. I know of roots and cambium, of heartwood, xylem, and phloem. But what of these curious protrusions that grip the earth as if holding on for dear life? Surely we need whimsy in what feels like chaos. We need to let our minds run free and to welcome the moments of imagination that allow us to breathe again and to smile, if only in passing. Why, they are the giant's toes, of course.
Beautifully read, and I'm probably going to echo again in a couple of seconds. So thank you very much for that. Beautifully done. Right, Anne switched off to avoid the echo, but thank you so much. I'm sure she'll be back on and listening. Beautifully done again. Good afternoon. Sharon's with us. Sharon McNichol saying hello. And Claire's going off. She's helping out with the twins. And Cliff Carr, good afternoon, John. And we're getting people from the YouTube now. Little Wings In, greetings from Manchester. And what else we got? Terry, I think we brought that. Terry saying what a beautiful collection. Anyway, Sherry enjoyed that from Anne. That was fantastic. Wonderful. Yeah, we've still got people on board. As I say, we've got a glorious day, and I think other people have got a glorious day. You can follow Anne's. I am put it up. I'm going to put it in the comments later, but you can follow Anne's beautiful poetry from Earthy. Oh dear, I'll get rid of this cough eventually. Excuse me. earthyblessingsblogspot.com, and I'll put that in the comments, or maybe Anne can. So it's earthyblessingsblogspot.com is where Anne's poetry and beautiful blog worth following as well. So thank you, Anne, for that lovely contribution. She's back in the background here, right through this tree season on Nature Folklore. And I look forward, hopefully, to you returning with us again sometime, if you will. And with whatever sound setup you've got, it might need the earplugs or the earphones. to stop the echo. This happens with some people, unfortunately. I think I've got all your comments. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Kate's here with us. Kate Cloud Sparks, who loved the poem Anne. And Anne has put it up. There you go. Earthy Blessings, blogspot.com. And there it is. I'll give you a moment to get that. So I get rid of some of this dust or whatever's going on. Wonderful. And to move on. It gets through to my pictures again. Buffer zones, yeah. Riparian buffer zones. So let me explain what they are. And it's lovely to hear that Anne has worked on these as well. So nice to see that it's going on in yours as well. But I'll explain a bit about how they work. Maybe you got a few pictures on it. The permanent semi-natural strips of vegetation. They include mainly trees, along with hedges, shrubs, pollinating flowers, tall grasses. And these riparian buffer zones form a biodiverse rich, they're a sandwich really, a nature sandwich. There's a lovely drone version. It shows you exactly what's going on. And it's between the water source and there's a river. You've got the lovely rich biodiverse buffer there, and there you got the agricultural land each side of it. So there you go. You got this wonderful natural biodiverse buffer following along the river, and that could be a lake as well. They separate what they do there, really, as you can see. They're separating the human managed agricultural land from the precious water with a wee lovely buffer of nature there, and letting nature do its thing. Now, these buffer zones contain mainly trees, along with hedges, shrubs, and pollinating flowers, as I mentioned. Plus, you also get the fungi and the mosses. They all arrive naturally. They all find a home there. You start putting a few trees in, and the rest of nature will find you. Building, and they'll come type of thing. So this all intercepts and manages pollution that would otherwise have made its way from the agricultural fields directly into the precious water, but that buffer is stopping a lot of it, at least anyway. And this is happening. The buffer there, the natural buffer, is doing this through natural processes that is applying the natural regeneration ways of nature. And this also includes the actions of wildlife, because when you got a buffer like this, the wildlife appear, they do their thing, they make their homes there, and this all helps with the management. When it's so when I talk about the corvids and the crows, the way they eat up pollutants and they actually clean them up in their digestive systems, make them safe. So this is where the wildlife comes in, and even the worms in the soil and the bugs, they do that as well. Now, what goes on with these natural buffer zones is just like the folklore tales, a battle. A lot of these tales, I don't do the battle tales on natural folklore, but if you went to other folklore classes or storytellers, there's always battles, and quite often in those battles there's a healing process. They come together, someone's got killed, one side's got killed, but what happens, the two sides come together, and that's followed by balanced unity. And that's what we all talk about, the stupidity of war, because the only way to stop a war is with peace talks, and that's where the healing begins and the balanced unity happens, and it sort of makes the war ridiculous, doesn't it? So to me, this is what the buffer zones are doing. There's sort of the healing process and the unity between the man-made agriculture and this essential water for our life that carries life. Now, riparian buffer zones provide, as I say, sanctuaries for life, and they're even wonderful retreat areas for ourselves, for our own human well-being. It's like an extension from the having a tree sanctuary that I was talking about last week. This is like an extended snaking tree sanctuary, isn't it? And all of this, in addition to being an efficient pollutant and flood management system, and we trust that it's managed by nature, because that's exactly what it does, rather than be a project of fragile human engineering. You know, our ego seems to think our engineering can do it better than the processes of nature, and that's just not right. But unfortunately, establishing riparian buffer zones is not recognized by many authorities yet. And I suppose that's why I call it authorities. There you go. There's a diagram of how that buffer zone works. Water, then you got an aquatic plant zone, and then you got the trees. And it's always like, it's a sort of water to agriculture land, permaculture, but it also brings in the we are the ark concepts as well, doesn't it? Anyway, as I say, riparian buffer zones is not recognized by authorities yet. And it's the usual stuff. They say it's due to the limitations of research and having results provided in the formats that the authorities look for. We often talk about when we do applications to banks, county councils, and so forth, we have to talk their language in order to get a response. And there's that strict linear language that they have. And I talk that in the folklore terms as well. Now, I feel that riparian buffer zones require a very different realm of human vision. And that could be inspired, as I say, by combining folklore stories like I often share on these Sunday sessions, or what you may hear. So combine those with hands-on apprenticeship and ongoing curating. That is how this will work. Now, authorities who enforce decisions for us to follow according to their learned style of research skills are enforcing results that are cultivated and harvested within what I describe as their linear realm. I often try to translate the meaning of what I call linear realm on these nature folklore sessions. To me, I feel it's essential that we feel and understand that nature is not linear, it's not in straight lines, it's a network of cycles, spirals, and waves. Connection and understanding nature's synergies requires trust in our senses and visions, and through that we can sort of feel and sense those cycles and waves. Now, it certainly doesn't come together through mental and emotional and spiritual synthesis. If we try, and I suppose this is what gets people a little bit stressed when we do try and order our mental, emotional, and spiritual responses into straight lines, into pigeonholes, into compartments. No, try the spiral and circular cycle route. That works. That's where the imagination comes. Now, modern human authority always has ways, it seems, of overriding the ways of nature because of their linear straight line policies. Now, the elite educated authority people, they've actually been, it's not new, they've been doing this for hundreds to thousands of years, really, as long as there's been an elite human population. But now linear authority seems to be on the verge of corrupting nature into a realm of at least human extinction. That is my concern with it. So due to this authoritarian linear priority, we have these major challenges and obstructions upon us, especially regarding the caring and management of water. Now, when we try to introduce better water quality through trusting a more natural catchment system, which is what I'm talking about, the establishing an authority policy of introducing and maintaining something like a riparian buffer zone seems to be actually impossible and is totally out of their realm. So it's like trying to feed grass to a cannibal, I think. And for riparian buffer zones to work, I believe it needs to start with local action. And I had something. Yeah, there we go. That's it. Go back to that diagram. Local action to try and provide something like that against our water sources, rivers, lochs, large ponds, whatever you have locally. And it requires, even it doesn't have to be totally community. Let's find someone together, even individual pioneering and prototype action on our land sets an example. And that's if we got land to do that. Now, this is because central authorities they'll constantly argue that not enough has been scientifically confirmed yet. As always happens when you use a nature formula, because they're so used to patents and people make money on patents. They don't make money on what nature's doing already. So in short, anyone that presents a riparian buffer zone idea to central authorities is likely to be instantly labeled as being a hippie or completely nuts. Of course, they grow hazel, that's why. And of course, rejection of riparian buffer zone concepts is totally nonsense, because what's being proposed through this buzz phrase of riparian buffer zones is really the natural conditions that have been around for millions of years before we had a human elite authority, with our authority systems. But a similar situation has existed, of course, for the last couple of 100 years, when we've had this kind of battle between herbal versus farmer. So I think that's a similar attitude myself. So through, though we've invented the buzz phrase riparian buffer zone to sound cool, this is a nature system that's been well and truly proven before us humans even existed. It seems to be the continual erosion of human connection to nature that makes us nature lovers seem to be the insane ones. The nature lovers are the ones that the elite will say, oh, you're completely nuts, you're insane. They just need to get out more. Now, as I mentioned, one of our guests today, Sarah Humble of All Is Well on the Ferry Council of Ireland. And here she is, she's messing with a well on this one, which is what she does. And when Sarah visited Carracrory here, we rambled an interview together, and it covered a few topics. I split this up, it was such a long interview and a chat. I split it up into 5 clips. So I'm going to share 2 of them with you today through this afternoon. Now, Sarah Humble, she's the creator, you're familiar with All Is Well. It's on Facebook. She's moderator on that beautiful group. And her incredible nomadic community and generating story. She's always charging around the country. She lives in a converted van, and she brings people together to clean up, restore, and regenerate holy wells. And that's one example there. And we'll talk about that when we do Women and Water. I'll talk about what happened there. And I've got an interview with part of an interview with Sarah. I'll leave till Women and Water, and we'll carry on with that picture of what's going on. Anyway, Sarah's a well-received guest on our In Bulk Sunday sessions in the past, and where she introduced All Is to us just for a few minutes. Now, on the All Is Well group site, Sarah's she posts links to the Ferry Council of Ireland. And that's it. If you look up Ferry Council of Ireland on your Google, you'll get to that. And she talks about that as well. And this was, well, when I saw Ferry Council of Ireland, actually, I thought, what a naff title that is. Even the conceited one. Maybe it was, and, by having that reaction, maybe I'm not as hippie as I thought I was. But I always had to remind myself that way back in 1975, I actually registered Celtic Ways. And when I did that, it was a tongue-in-cheek bit of satire. I'm not going into the story why. But people say, oh, what is Celtic? What are you talking about? I did it as satire because of all the arguments over what is Celtic. Anyway, within an article, there's this lovely article storyteller, lovely blog, Ali Isaac. She wrote one, and it was about the Ferry Council of Ireland, and in it she included Sarah and also Seamus Drogo. And Seamus explained how the Ferry Council name happened, and it's really hilarious. Seamus explained that the Ferry Council, it started, let's show you Seamus. There you go, there's Seamus. He explained that the Ferry Council started as a joke because they were all in a meeting. Sarah got herself into this environmental meeting, I think it was, in Dublin Castle. And each person was asked which body were they representing. And of course, these were all the various elite administration bodies around Ireland. And there was Sarah amongst all these. And she had to quickly answer, which body did she belong to? And she thought it was a bit of a silly question anyway. So her immediate response is, I'm Sarah Humble of the Ferry Council. And that's how the name came about amongst all these official bodies. Anyway, to that point, from what I understand, Sarah's been building up a vision of network people along with Seamus to help. And it's all about the caring of water, trees, and the land, and the spirit-based energy through people that she met as she travels and she travels from Holy Well to Holy Well. And Sarah hooked up with the company of Seamus. There they are together at Lock Crew. And Seamus is also a skilled illustrator and designer. And together they move the concept, and there we go, another logo from Seamus, of the Ferry Council of Ireland, and the online website was born. And Seamus, I love what he says. He says that the Ferry Council is for everyone, because everyone has a bit of fairiness within them. So Sarah Humble, she certainly has. And so here's the first of 2 clips. It's a very interesting second clip coming up later, where you'll see the 2 of us as on fire. But first, this is us getting used to each other. And it's Sarah Humble talking about fascinating well restoration project that she's been involved in and initiated. It's been going on for about 5 or 6 years. So I'm going to raise the video clip here. I didn't have it ready. It only took me a second to. So this is the first one from Sarah Humble here. And no. Oh, yeah, sorry. I clicked the wrong video. And here we go. Sarah Humble. She must be here somewhere. Lock Crew. Here we go. Who should be? Here we go. Try again. Fantastic privilege. Got Sarah Humble at last here talking about water folklore and trees, and for our water or trees in water folklore session for the 27th, which is the day it should be. So I'll probably be editing that out anyway. And also we got a lovely dog, Eva, who's come along. There we go. Oh, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here at last, visiting Carrowcrory and having a wee chat about all is well and the wells in relation to trees. And Sarah, if you hadn't picked up, and that's the camera there, if you hadn't picked up Sarah, you may be familiar with her if you go to All Is Well on Facebook, a beautiful group, lovely photos and articles to go to. Also, the Ferry Council, it is ferrycouncil.ie, isn't it? And you'll find links to everything you would want to know regarding folklore and how folklore is in action around Ireland, which is fantastic. And we'll talk about it later, but I've just heard that Sarah is also now a director of the Gaelic Woodland project. So it's where to start. We've been shuffling around some photos, and I've been sort of organizing so we can actually show a few, and I'll kind of line them up for you here. And the one thing that's intrigued, and I think we'll kick off this, I've got some photos of a lovely well project that you're involved in Lock Crew. So if you can introduce it to us, and I'll try and find some appropriate photos to demonstrate what we got. Oh, I suppose in a way you could start off with talking about your feeling of wells and their importance for us to be connected to.
So wells, I feel, were these original community spaces that don't require any money. It's something that binds us, something that requires no belief system to be there, but they are therapeutic landscapes where you will innately feel calmer. The wells are the one things that actually connect us through our society, and water has always been pivotal to the evolution of civilization. So water is incredibly important to how everything flows in our world. I often find that our emotional state is connected to how our water in our vicinity actually is. If it's all muddy, if it's all dirty, or well, quite often you'll be feeling kind of grotty on the inside, and you always feel better when you interact with these spaces.
Yeah, definitely. As I say, with the Lock Crew well that you've been involved with, and it seems to involve this character. Well, it's you there. Was it to do with this fella in the way that you found it?
Well, it wasn't that fellow, but he has been very pivotal. That's Tom. He lives at the end of the road in Lock Crew. So Summerbank Road is where Tupper Tobeen is. And I heard tale of this well up in Lock Crew, and I had run out of Ishka. And I was nosing around, and somebody had told me that there was this well up there, and all I could see was this stream coming from the runoff. And next thing, this really lovely man pops out of the hedgerow. And I ask him about the well, and he says, "Oh, that's the well we used as children." So Martin Short, who inherited the land that he owns, where the well is, inherited it from McTobin, who was pivotal in creating that whole space up in Knockrew. He was very warm, very welcoming, knew all the history and the lore. And Martin told me that that well released 40 litres a day that would be collected, and the well would never change. Well, I came across it, and it was actually in underneath the road, somewhere where I'd never considered. So this was the first year that I found it. And it was essentially just this muddied ditch with this well hiding out in underneath the road. So I spent 3 days there trying to empty the well. Rather ridiculous, really, considering it's attributed to being the source of the River Inny, which comes down to Lough and was one of the tributaries of the mighty River Shannon. So I was never going to empty this well, but it had engaged enough community interest that photo that you showed of Tom, when I left, both Tom and Martin got together and they laid the first steps for the community interaction with that well. So they put that beautiful bridge in, stone bridge in, and God knows how they lifted the stone that
Right.
day.
I think I'll get the photos up of that. I've got bridge one somewhere.
No, that's early days. That is. If we go back down, John.
There we go. That's you.
That's me working that well.
Yeah,
Me again. That was a long, wet day.
This is in the later developments. Let's find something of a bridge.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
It's the one
here.
below. It's the first one. Right.
So this is when they actually put the bridge in. And Martin himself sent me these photos, and they had laid in a wee bench beside the bridge, and they put more cups to feed an army. Now those cups just disappeared.
Oh yeah.
It's been lovely because it set down the strands for what was to become. So over the years, I think it's 5 years that we've been working with that well. Different people have come from all over the country. We have a stone that was carved from the leftover flagstones that was used to build the wee centre.
Is that one of them?
No. I didn't actually send you a picture, but that was carved. There's a stone there carved with the wee puzzle from a man in Wicklow. A man from Dublin came and helped lay the flagstones in beside the well. There is, I don't think all man came. Then there was a community garden built one solstice as well. It's just expanded over the years. There's a Ferry village that has come. So this photo was the last time that we did any modifications, and we expanded the community garden. We laid in a lot of flagstones and more stonework because it makes it easier for the well to maintain if you're not having to constantly weed the grasses. And, it gives us opportunity to introduce more herbs if we can take that grass in out of it. So bee pollinators. So we've created a wee space for the children, for people to come and sit, because I find beside wells, the well is a draw, but having other things, having a reason to be beside the wells, is really, really important for people to feel like they have a reason to be there. So that was done with the help of a man called Frank Doyle, who's been very, very pivotal in the All Is Well journey. He's been showing me how to read landscape. He's shown me an awful lot of stonework, how to even lift and roll stones, because that's an art form in itself, and how to fit them together so that there's stability. So he was very, very helpful over a good couple of years.
And you were saying this has been a well that you've been restoring over years. How many years is that?
I think it's 5 years now.
So the photos are over a 5-year period.
That's it. The one with the very, very messy, I didn't have anything with me, so I nailed 2 planks of wood together and created a little sign out of things I had in the van. But I think it doesn't matter how much you do, it's the intention that you put towards it. So in that moment of meeting that well, we started this deep, intimate relationship where I go several times a year and I added little bits to it. And over the course of 5 years, it's turned into something of magnificent that has had people participate, whether it be through music or, sculptures or, adding wee bits. And, I think when these places are taken into guardianship from a community, and it doesn't have to even be the local community, it can be the people that are coming to these sites to experience them. Loughcrew is an amazing archaeology site and is home to so much of our lore. The Cailleach is said to be reside in Loughcrew, and she would be the older woman, the woman who has abundance and has nothing to prove. There's so much folklore in. I remember reading a story about the Cailleach, and it was in and around the well, and she believed that at the beginning of every journey and at the end of every journey, that you wash your feet. And this is a way of, it would have been a practical reason, really, stop the spread of pathogens and germs and things like that. But it also gives you a moment and a pause to be present, that you are entering into a space where that can be quite transformational. Oh, I love this photo.
Yeah, tell us about this. We'll move on to this one because of, as you were saying, we're talking about trees, water. It's not really clear on this photo, I don't think. We'll have one a bit later. But as you were saying, we'll describe it. There's a tree above the well housing there.
So this is Tobermory. It's out by Ross Erisk Abbey, which is out in Le Carrow in County Mayo. And it has a cure for the eyes. But the really unusual thing about this well is about the locals say that about 100 years ago, this hawthorn appeared up on top of the well house. Now, you cannot see any of the root structures on the roof of the well or underneath the well, so nobody knows where the root system is, but it has been there for about 100 years, and it gives this like really delicious crop of hawthorns to it.
Amazing. The one thing I didn't say, going back to the one at Loughcrew, where exactly is that?
Loughcrew is between Oldcastle and Virginia.
Aye, it's where the well is.
That's where the well is, right at the base of Loughcrew Carron. So if you type in Loughcrew Megalithic Centre, you'll get access to or you can check it out on the Ferry Council, actually. Loughcrew is one of our members. And they have this beautiful caravan, glamping, camping site, so you can actually stay in the area, and then
And it's actually by it. Is that the in the background? Is that the visitor centre there?
That's the visitor centre. They have a cafe open during the summer, and it's a right thriving place to go. So
you come out and go to the left, and there it is.
Exactly, it's right across the
right.
road.
That's absolutely brilliant, because I wasn't sure myself from the photos exactly in relation where it is, because I haven't been there for a while. Well, that's that. So that's the first session from the interview from the lovely Sarah Humble. And that last well, to Le Carrow, the housing with the hawthorn on it. Sorry, I didn't get the picture up for you, but to believe on that roof, it's amazing. There's this heritage hawthorn tree. But she says, where's the roots? It's sort of integrated into the building. Fascinating. So I think that was a lovely introduction with what the work that Sarah does. And that was started off as a sort of like a bit of mud, watery mud at the side of the road. And they got their hands into it and recreated the well as it was, with the help of local people who described how it was. They got involved, and then they added those extras. And you saw there was a digger that donated a bit of land behind, and that's now a community garden where they're growing vegetables by the well. And they have obviously a bit of a buffer as well. So we'll continue a bit, including a little bit about riparian buffer zones a bit more. And Cliff's come up with a point where he lives. Farmer got rid of the hedgerows. They realized by doing so caused so many problems with erosion of topsoil. I saw that with a job that I was doing in Hereford. This was in the 70s. And you went through there, and especially into Shropshire, where the hedges were damson trees, wild damson trees, beautiful. But the farmers got rid of them, put fences up, and the water came, there was floods, and the mud from the field just covered the roads. It was just a mess. And so the breadbasket of the country was depleting very quickly. Anyway, to go more onto the riparian buffer zones, and I got some more photos of that. We got Sarah back a bit later on another issue, but my feeling, and I know the feeling the Gaelic Woodland Project is, and other woodland and waterway groups, is that rivers at risk should try this riparian buffer approach. They should do it now without any further delay, because this is the sort of things at risk. There you go. I think 4 pictures there. You've got the cows, and you've got the monoculture forestry there causing its bit. But there is a picture of the buffers as well. So there's some buffering going on there, apparently, with a tick on it. But that's what should be done in the community and starting off on your own land. Individuals and small groups can do these projects. You don't need to get planning permission with most of them. And if you're watching Nature Folklore and you're a farmer, eager to align your land, you can do this. And what you're doing is more sustainable and spiritual practices with the land that you're creators of. So if your land is by water, try out the riparian buffer zone in some way. I suggest, if you're not doing similar already. And I'm sure no harm can happen from just trying. And there's very little financial cost by the looks of it as well. So what you achieve with this would actually set powerful examples for others to look at and copy. This is why I talk about apprenticeship. If you start something off, then you suddenly become the teacher of something that's a valuable apprenticeship. And this has amazing potential. As I say, with apprenticeships, people can learn, practice, copy from you. And the multi-species riparian buffer zone creates a wonderful synthesis that connects not only the terrestrial, but the aquatic ecosystems. It protects both. But this buffer between the aquatic and the agriculture has a wonderful, there's no separations. It's like the buffer is a transition between one and the other, and it's processing to make safe passage between one and the other. Now, there will be a huge advantage here in Ireland if our remaining natural woodlands would do this, because our woodlands, they're so small. What remains of the ancient woodlands, they're so very small. They're very isolated. Most of the woodland in Ireland is Sitka spruce plantations. And I often speak of how squirrels are now deprived of the opportunity of swinging tree to tree between Dublin and Sligo. And our riparian buffer zones along waterways between the water and the agricultural land would increase the breeding and population potential for animals, as well as birds, insects, other plants. And it would allow natural migrations to come back as well, and all of those benefits. And eventually, squirrels would actually be able to swing from Dublin to Sligo. Now, there would be amazing increases in the working and functioning of the essential life processes that we call biodiversity, the life-giving biodiversity. All that would be increased by these buffer zones. Now, I know I'm repeating myself a bit about these riparian buffer zones, but I think it's important, to get the visual of this, which perhaps I'm doing by repeating. But when cattle drink at the waterside through dragging their hooves, and abundant water runoff happens after a heavy rain, both of these situations accelerate potential damaging and very wasteful erosion. The nutrients in the soil, the agricultural soil, it's there to stay. We don't need it to run off. It's there to stay in that solid form to continue to support terrestrial plant life and animal life too. Now, if these nutrients excessively flow from the agricultural land into the waterways, the aquatic plants are, oh, what's going on? And of course, they start, this is new food, and they're going to take advantage of it. But the thing is, the aquatic plants start to think they're terrestrial plants, and that creates a chronic, unsustainable, unbalanced, biodisturbed situation. Actually, some of the blanket bogs, that's how they came about, is by, funnily enough, by ancient man corrupting the upper areas, you know, we're even going back to the Tour de Donum with this. They use the upper areas to farm because it didn't require so many trees to fall, but there was effluent coming off. It went down into water. The water then drank off of that, and they became bogs. So, you know, that's how bogs, of course, the bogs hold carbon as well. Anyway, I'm going into another subject. But thinking of another chronic unsustainable biodisturbed situation, I would like to bring Sarah back again already to talk about what's going on in the sacred and folklore-rich River Boyne area in County Meath, because there's a situation there not far away from Navan, where there's a potential serious challenge. I'll put the sign up. That's what's happening. There's a campaign going on for Save the Boyne, because there's a pipeline coming down. Well, it's not from near Navan. I'm trying to think where this little village is. It's from Slane. It's from near Slane. The pipeline's coming down from Slane, going into the Boyne, and that has the potential of serious pollution coming into the Boyle River, which people go to the Boyle. They regard it as highly sacred because, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. This is what's happening. There's a meat company, Dawn Meats, and they process Irish reared meat so that it can be exported. As I say, Ireland produces much more food it needs, especially in beef. But it's really weird because Ireland exports a lot of food and it also imports stuff that it could produce itself. We're having this. No, I won't go into that one because I'm running into time. But what this proposal is suggesting or applying for is to pump an additional 400,000 litres of slaughterhouse waste material in a water slurry form direct into the Boyne River. And there's some angry fishermen here. They're very angry about it. They're part of the protest group as well. But all is well. The Gaelic Woodland Project, the Wolf Academy, and the Save the Boyne group, they all came together recently. I think it was last Sunday, I think. They came together for a cleanup. And they shared crack, of course. Crack in Ireland doesn't mean what you're thinking. You know, they had a great time. They had a picnic, they had a fire and a barbecue, the rest of it. But they did the work. I mean, the amount of crap they took out of the Boyle was phenomenal. So this was not just these organizations, but the volunteers that came along as well. So I've got Sarah again, and she's going to be talking about what's happening at the Boyne, because it really connects very well with her well work as well. So give me a second to get her second video of today up, where this is about the Boyne. There we go. I think it's that one. We'll try that. No. Sorry about this. I haven't lined it up. I'll try again. It was refusing to come up. I'll try it yet again. I'd be ashamed if this one doesn't come up. So say this is Sarah with the Boyne. Have I got the right thing? I tell you what, I'm going to try something else. We'll get this. Sarah Humble. There we go. We'll announce with a Boyne. There we go. I'm getting it from another source, and this should work. There you go. Envisage your next well project from here.
I never know. That's the truth. It's wonderful to see more interactions. I get lots of people communicating with me. So I've started working with a lady who does visual anthropology. She's based over in England, but she's looking to explore the lament and the purpose of death in and around the wells. Now, it seems to be flowing forward. So she's actually coming over next week, which will be last week, which is a bit confusing because we're doing a bit of a time warp here, John. The moment is time now. Yes. So she's coming over and we're going to spend a couple of days going to a couple of different wells. And she's also connected in with the traveling community in with their lore and whatnot. So we're going to spend a bit of time with them. So I'm not sure when release dates of that are on. At the moment, we're very much focusing on the Well of Necton and the story of Boann.
Mhm.
in and around the objections to be raised about non-meats pumping 400,000 litres of their waste material into the River Boyne a day. In perspective, that's an Olympic size and a half. So you can check out the page. You can get access to it through the issue section on the Ferry Council.
Okay.
SaveTheBoyne.org is the organization, and Tommy has been holding this for the last couple of years. So we're raising in and around awareness. Submissions have to be sent in before the against the objection of this happening to one of our sacred rivers that holds the salmon of knowledge, that holds the story of one of our great river goddesses, the Bowan, who was also attributed with being one of the cow goddesses. You know, the Boyne is the same shape as the River Nile. Some of our most important archaeology sites are there, you know, and we have got all these EU directives that say we cannot be polluting these rivers, and yet these planning applications are still being put forward. I would like to see the stewardship and the guardianship of these spaces under the basis of our mythology for the ecology. And these spaces should not only be in good to moderate quality, they should be in pristine.
Yeah.
So we're focusing, and I know a river does start as a well, so I just suppose it is an expansion. There's a lot of wonderful projects that are getting on board, and we're hoping to create a bit more publicity awareness in with the co-creation of these different projects. So Siobhan Lepore, Andrew Hegarty, Aaron Hegarty, the Wolf Academy, the Gaelic Woodland Project, we're all sticking our minds together because it takes a complete picture. You and I were talking about this, about how communities, if we take each of our own way of approaching things, we get a much more complete picture or plan or solution in how to stop this desecration. How to stop this head in the sand behavior, that there is no cause and effect for these things that we are doing to our society. And unfortunately, most of the meats and non-meats are being exported. It's not even feeding our people. So why should we be allowing something so sacred and dear to the ecology of this landscape?
Which is feeding the people.
Which is feeding the people, which is on a soul level,
yes.
as well as a mind level, as well as a physical level. You know, these places really need to be preserved. So that's what we're working on with y'all as well, and it's in collaboration with lots of other different projects. Some who I have not mentioned because we would take up the rest of the show if I was to go on about the amount of
I could go on for hours and hours. I think we could fill the entire series if we just carried on.
We'll start co-hosting, shall we, John?
So thank you so much for that, Sarah. Absolutely interesting. And thanks also for the patience, listening, and inspiration of Evie. There's Evie. Little Evie.
2 cents.
Fun?
She had her 2 cents in as well.
Yeah, very good. Lovely. Thanks very much for that, Sarah.
Thank you,
It's
John.
such a joy. Hopefully we'll do it again, maybe one time live when the comments come in.
We're at your new place anyhow. So
right. And that's right. Here we go. Sarah Humble, that's what we have from her today. As I say, I've got 3 other clips to share. And we're going to save those for the Women in Water, I think, which is in May. So we'll bring back Sarah for those as well. Sorry, I don't have the equipment for the dual camera equipment. I might do a fundraiser this summer for that. I would need subscribers. I have to go to a higher level of subscription for the 2-camera effect and also for the equipment to do that 2-camera. So you would get my big wide torso and self out of it, and it would have been a camera on Sarah. So by next winter, hopefully, I'll have that established on Nature Folklore. So forgive me, because Sarah is tiny. So sorry for that misbalance there. Some comments here. Sarah's such a delight, doing amazing work. And we've got Charlene in from Whidbey Island, Washington, who's a fan of Sarah's work as well. So, yeah, I wish we could have more of her, but I'm sure we will. She's very busy, as you can imagine. I know she's where she is at the moment. She's on an amazing project somewhere. So I go, I said this would be a 2-hour session. It's not going to be far off it. We've got a couple of guests yet. But regarding the cattle and pollution, the cattle and their pollution potential, I better get back to my pictures library because I think I'll probably be using this very soon. I showed the angry pictures, fishermen last, didn't I? But the cattle and the riverbanks, one engineering solution for this. And so this is where human engineering can actually be useful. It might not seem natural, but it seems to help a bit. Is you can use solar energy to pump water up from the river or the loch direct into water troughs into the fields where the cattle are. And what that means is the cattle do not need to approach and drink direct from the banks of the rivers and the lochs and the lakes. But as for prevention of erosion from heavy rainfall and the runoff that happens with that, the roots of vegetation used in a riparian buffer zone also provides amazing bank stabilization because of the tight roots. We've even practiced this here at Carracrory by the alder hedge, by having that as a buffer between what was the damp area, boggy area here, and but stopping the nutrients going down into the bog below. We are practicing a riparian buffer zone even here at Little Carracrory. So anything to prevent field erosion, really. And this buffer vegetation also sucks up water during the runoff. So when the water goes flushing down from the rain, it doesn't all go into the river. There's trees there, and the trees can hold a phenomenal amount. I think a mature oak is 300 gallons a day, something like that, and then evaporates through the leaves into the sky. So they are like, they suck up the water from runoffs. And some people say they call trees a drain, even though they're sucking them up. So mature trees within a riparian buffer area become excellent for water storage, and they serve, sinks, that's the term. Trees are sinks, so the water goes down to the roots, up into the tree. They're sinks, and they're great sinks for storm water, rainfall. Without those trees, that river could flood. So it's great for flood prevention as well to have these buffers. Now, the root networks of these trees, they also transport heavy rainwater away. The ones that the waters are not used by the roots to bring up into the tree, they run down into the groundwater, and that could actually redirect to streams that could actually emerge back in the surface as filtered spring water, because a lot of holy wells are actually on the side of these rivers, and that's why they're there, because of this action taking place. So that's why there's holy wells. But by having a riparian buffer, it greatly reduces erosion from agricultural land. That's the main point. And that means fish spawning beds, salmon and the trout and all that wonderful wildlife that comes up, which is also food if we forage in a responsible way. That's all protected from the runoff as well. The spawning beds are preserved there. They're not being drowned out and buried by the sediment from the land erosion that's entering from the fields. So this remarkably preserves water biodiversity and its own systems of natural purification. So the water gets clean as well. It doesn't get polluted. Anyway, let's get on to the next guest, Edward Durand. He's been a poet mainly of nature folklore for several years. He walked with others on what was called poetry walks, and he joined us quite often for Bards in the Woods. And here's Edward with us with Bards in the Woods. That's a session he was. And sometimes he came along with his daughter Mary, and she was quite young, I think 7 at the time, and she became quite a poet as well. Now these days, Edward's very busy coordinating Permaculture Sligo, and that had originally the idea of people helping each other with their permaculture gardens and establish them. But funnily enough, it's become more into helping each other plant triskells. There's something like 53 Hazel Triskells now planted around Ireland, thanks to these Permablitz meetings that are going on. So it's almost like Triskel Blitz that's going on. And he's not with us live today because he's off on one of these Triskel Blitz. And it gets hazels growing, more hazels around Ireland, which is fantastic. So I hope Edward will be able to be a guest with us and talk about this, because the next series is permacultural living. So it'd be great to have him live for that. Anyway, Edward's done a recording of a couple of tree poems for us. And he's actually got a hang drum player who's accompanying with this one. So I'll bring on Edward and a couple of poems, and I'll explain where they come from a bit later on. So here's Edward Durand with his couple of poems about trees.
Ash Nuan, Ash the world tree, tree of life, lofty noble, so alive, balancing the energy and creating harmony, linking inner and outer worlds, its natural power is unfurled, giving health and courage too, connecting us to be in tune. Wise tree of new life and rebirth, hugging with its roots the earth, with strength yet flexibility, power and surrendering. The bark burn brings prophetic dreams, infections are cured with its leaves, aids digestion and fever chronic, root bark astringent and a tonic, helping mastership and grounding, universal order and belonging. It gives a wand that can protect, its leaves bring love and affluence. Strong guardian with soft tender leaves, attune us to free nature's peace, with power of positivity, connecting to earth, sky and sea. Willow, Sally. Willow, the priestess of prophecy, healing and enchanting me, opening my eyes that I can see visions of deeper mystery. Water she cleans and through it she heals. We can scry into water reflecting her leaves. The moon ripples too through her outstretched arms. Few are completely immune to her charms. As she grows gracefully by river bank, she treats illnesses connected with damp. A decoction of her boiled bark and leaves can clear dandruff, just say please, and thank this queen with all your heart. Inspiration and wisdom she may impart, for she holds the secrets of psychic vision, poetry and intuition. Used in spells of love and fertility, her stick will grow into a new tree. Or you could use it as a wand for revealing. Her incense can bring emotional healing. This maiden of dreams and psychic powers can fascinate poets and seers for hours, connecting through their deep inner minds to a realm where everything's divine.
Well, there we go, Edward Durand, and those poems were they were Ash and Willow, as you might probably gather, and they're from his tree book. It's called Tree Poems, sort of a twist on Ogham, of course, and I'll post a link in comments to that book after the show. Now, that's Tree Poems. Comments, there was a couple of comments flowing in. There's a Cosmic something. Cosmic Mirror, love you unconditionally. I assume that's for Sarah from South Carolina. Sarah was a delight. Amazing. Thank you, friend, from Sherry there. Wonderful. Press on quickly. Here's some practical stuff about riparian buffer zones. Wish I had pictures, but I didn't have time to put them up, so use your imagination. Having that riparian buffer zone between water and agricultural land can be fenced, but I prefer hedging. Go for the hedging if you can. That's the way to go. Put the hedging along the edges of agricultural fields and have access gates. You don't completely deprive the cattle. From time to time, a farmer can actually let the cattle and animals through the gates and get into that natural buffer zone as a bit of a treat. So a little grazing does no harm. In fact, I lived doing a project in Herefordshire, right by the place where the original Hereford cattle were bred. And they were bred amongst trees. And these trees were a buffer zone against a river. So even the origin of the Hereford cattle comes from this sort of environment. So you can have the cattle in for a short time, and by having animals in with these short times, it actually adds another biodiversity dimension. The problem is if you've got many cattle grazing all the time. But riparian buffer zone areas would also attract and enhance tourism interests, especially walkers, cyclists. We have those angry anglers that I showed earlier. But also, especially people like watching this, people that go on pilgrimage, they're looking for relaxation, nature-loving environments, and they all have spiritual, nourishing intents. All this is possible through these buffer zones. And as I've mentioned this through other nature folklore stories, we seriously do need easy access and use of nature sanctuary and retreat for our own health care, our own health protection. I talked last week about tree sanctuaries. Buffer zones are equally good sanctuaries where you could go for a walk and contemplate, and you buy the water, you buy the trees. What could be better? Anyway, wherever tourists are attracted, there's also a boosted local economy that's developed that gets very vibrant and helps to fund things that the community are trying to do, because there's always a need for service and sales of snacks, lunches, teas, gifts, somewhere to have a chat around, also books, further education, and these people that want to hang around a while, accommodation as well. Now, the biggest challenge to these buffer zones is landowner participation, getting landowners to support these ideas, and actually creating riparian buffer zone areas. Now, I know a farmer, someone's close friend of Claire's, actually a family member, around Balsoon, which is near Bective, which you may be familiar with, on the Boyne River. And years ago, he actually put a riparian buffer zone in. And he's very, very proud of it. He can't, every time he sees me, he wants to talk about the latest of what's going on there. He loves it. And this is a man that has absolutely no interest in green issues, generally. So I must find out what his motivation was to have this on his land between his cows and his agriculture and the Boyne. So he's protecting the Boyne from his farm, which is absolutely fabulous. Find out what prompted him. If I can find that out, then any farmer can be tempted onto this. So I possibly had engagement through environmental consultants. That can help if they sort of speak the language. So there are consultants for trees and water. So maybe they help a lot in encouraging farmers and encouraging their biodiversity thinking. But one thing about these consultants, they're also very good mentors of how to get extra grants. So I'm sure that helps a lot too. But many farmers, they may often need reminders about how soil health is so crucial for the resilience and sustainability for their farms if they have any hope of continuing making a living from farming, and more important, for their descendants to carry on making a living. Now, there are cost saver incentives. It's not all about extra grants and extra profit, because riparian buffer zone areas, they're remarkable for sustaining and preserving organic matter in the agricultural soil. And of course, this reduces costs of fertilizer. I had the man that delivers goat's milk to me saying the cost of fertilizer is so awful. And I talked to him about these riparian buffer zones because they have a river. So he's onto it. And extra trees and shrubs also provide shelter for birds and hunting mammals. So that keeps away pests and vermin from the crops. When there are crops, that's a good thing. And the buffer zone trees also are amazing as windbreakers, and that saves potential crops from damage. And this is talking about places like Meath, Waterford, Wexford, places where Offaly, where they grow crops, Tipperary. And of course, in your country, wherever they do that. Now, riparian buffers can be amazing as part of permaculture management on land. And many farms are now actually converting to permaculture principles. And that's even including the return of mixed crop farming. And there's huge benefits. There's a lot of wetlands in Ireland. And what do you do with those? We nearly ended up buying a place that had wetlands. So I think there's more attention needed on these wetlands and wetland farming. We don't need to preserve it all, and we don't need to dig it all up for turf. One example is encouraging the growing of cattails. Sorry, I haven't got a picture of that. But cattails are wonderful as a plant. They can be manufactured into a product that's called typha board. I wish I had got the pictures up, sorry. But typha board is an eco form of insulation. And there is a growing shortage of property insulation in the construction industry around the world. It's difficult to get these sort of plasticky materials. But where there's wetlands, it's wonderful. People think, oh, just grow hemp. Cattails definitely is a much more eco way of going about it because it requires less space. I know it's another monoculture crop, but it uses the wetlands, and hemp's not so great on the wetlands. And you make this type of board great for insulation, using up space that can be used up. Anyway, I'll move on from that. Also more practical than sheep's wool. Cat's tail is more better than sheep's wool. Fantastic insulation. But overall, the top benefit of the riparian buffer zones is what they encourage and what they provide is the much needed biodiversity zones, the increasing of biodiversity between land and water. And this is desperately needed for so many reasons that I've tried to explain this afternoon. The best trees for growing in the riparian buffer zone start off with willow and alder. They like sucking up the water. They love being beside water. They're born to be beside water. And then soon after, you could bring in the hazels, the gelder, gelder rose, bring in hawthorns, or in most cases, they'll bring themselves in. And eventually, a few years later, you can bring in the pedunculate oak. You can bring the Ireland's natural sisal oak if you want. But the pedunculate oak, known as English oak, encourage a vast arrival of incredibly communicating biodiverse insects, mosses, fungi. They really are the mother trees. And this is something I'm going to be talking about in the next series that I'll be doing through April with biodiversity permaculture living. Now, bringing in the oaks, to me, is like bringing the cockerel into a flock of hens, though, of course, they're regarded as mother trees. Anyway, I talked about willow, and I'm going to bring our last guest on for this. This is Margie Dunn. Margie is a real stunning artist. Let's bring her in. She has this lovely studio. It's by the trees, and it's by Loch Key, beautiful loch in County Roscommon. And so Margie's also a wonderful poet and storyteller, as well as a painter. But today, Margie's going to do something a bit different. It's her own personal interpretation of willow trees, which is inspired by heritage willow trees that are where Margie lives with her husband, Dan. So this is our last video, and I'll get this up for you now. So here's Margie Dunn introducing her willows. Wonderful artist, but here talking about willows.
Hi, my name is Margie Dunn, and I'm going to talk about the willow tree and its association with water. Willows are often found where land meets water. Willow trees are important in the Celtic mythology and are considered sacred as they grow mostly on riverbanks and lakesides. The willow tree features often in the stories of Celtic nations and are associated with water, new growth, optimism, movement, adaptability. In modern times, it is associated with witchcraft, Wicca, and sometimes with sadness. The traditional Celtic festivals celebrated between the seasons, the sacred wells of Ireland, are found at the source of the rivers of Ireland. The willow tree has special significance if grown at these wells.
Lovely, short and sweet interpretation, Margie there. And just before that, Anne came in with a lovely interpretation regarding the riparian forestry. Anyone who looks for birds in the wilds knows that it is in these buffers, in the intersection between one habitat and another, where the greatest number of birds are found. which is so true, isn't it? Whether it be river, woodlands, or woodlands and fields and wetlands, or either, standing next to the buffers and watching for what emerges is such an adventure, even while standing still. And that's lovely, because Anne's had the experience there of being involved with these buffers. And I can relate to that. Carracrory here, as I say, we did this alder hedge with other plants. There's also some hawthorns amongst it now, blackthorns. There's even some bamboo sneaked in. And it's true, the birds have really collected, the wildlife is really collected. And the one thing with the tree labyrinth as well, it's amazing, the wildlife, especially the birds. And it's such a joy when you're on the edge of it and see the birds doing the stuff. Anyway, here in Ireland, the riparian forestry along waterways, I feel it must be adapted. It is visionary thinking, and it should and must replace the current priority linear thinking that we have with applied to peatland. We have the monoculture tree plantation put over these bog areas, which is disgusting. There's a lot of problems. And research published in Kerry here has shown that carbon emitted from the degrading peat within these monoculture plantations that are put on the turf actually emits more carbon than the trees could possibly sequester in that environment. So again, that's ridiculous. Elite authority decisions. And 40% of Irish forestry is now on peatland itself. So a huge change of policy is needed to encourage a change in this. So how do we go about that? Most of Ireland, we have a Green Party in Ireland, and they're in joint government at the moment because they needed those few votes to have a majority government. They weren't really wanted. Most people in Ireland really don't like the Green Party. They don't like it here at all. They don't like the idea of an environmental party anyway. But one of the benefits of getting them into the coalition has been a huge expansion of greenway networks. If you don't know what they are, they're paths that they take people away from the roads, that they can actually supposedly go into nature and be more active and build their health up. But the trouble with those paths, they encourage healthier walking and cycling, but those greenways are made out of tarmac. We're getting all this tarmac that's going through woodlands and along railway lines. Not exactly green, but it's a Green Party that helped to bring this about. But the thing is, these greenways have been put in, and I don't think there's been that much thought about what's supposed to be each side of them. Now, many of these greenways, they also, for the tarmac to go down, they needed trees to be chopped down too in order to put the tarmac down. So really, though the idea was there by the Green Party, that wouldn't be done otherwise, in its current state, these greenways are often not very green anyway. Nice to have for the exercise, but it's a start, because these tarmac greenways, what they have done is reestablished rights of way that people were sneaking back for their farms. There were rights of way, but people said, nobody's using them, and farmers were taking them. So what this has done is brought the public land, the public routes back to the public. So maybe the tarmac initially has been a good thing. But what I feel would make more completeness is if these greenways were real greenways, they evolve into real greenways, especially beside the ones, there's lots of them now beside canals, rivers, and around locks. I did have a picture of one that's not too far away from here. If I can bring that one up, off from this sort of thing. That's a wide greenway. It's not even tarmac. That's a wooden one, but which is nice, isn't it? But this means they have the potential of expanding into creating genuine riparian buffer zones that includes access paths that people can walk. They can take their strollers. They can take their wheelchairs even, and still cycle. And for a Green Party to encourage that expansion, I feel would actually encourage them towards being more like a Green Party. And I often talk of linear thinking and living competing with the natural cycle and spiral vision of application right here on Nature Folklore. And I started this riparian buffer zone talking about that and in between. Now, another broad phrase of this could be working with the synergies of nature. This is a more natural approach, and it seems to require a lot more courage from educators, policy and thought. Oh, sorry, again, tongue twisted. Educators and policy and thought. Maybe maybe I'm hungry or something. I'll try that again. Take a deep breath, Ron. I think there needs to be a lot of encouragement and courage from educators and policy enforcing authorities. And they need to be encouraged to dare themselves to take a more natural approach. But they only seem to be trained in these linear applications. This is the block we got. And to me, this all started with humans going back to the medieval scribes. There they were, the medieval scribes that I talk about in Nature Folklore. They're getting these oral stories and they're sort of scratching their heads. How can I put this down in this linear language that I've learned, the Latin? And then we're putting the ohm in linear by the time of the late medieval. So everything had to be translated into linear. Oh, that'll do. So really, they're not translating. It's impossible to put a vision, I feel, into right now. Writers have this frustration all the time. How do you put the vision into lines of words? But I think if you believe in the words more than the vision, then that's where the problems have happened. So I fear and interpret that failing to make shifts from these stubborn linear approaches into more synergistic vision approaches, there can only be destruction to the workings and balancing of the dancing rhythms of nature. And I think on that subject, I've got more to say, but I think on that subject, thank you, Gaelic Woodland Project, for their inspiration, photographs, and a lot of what I've shared with you today was all thanks to the information that the Gaelic Woodland Project have actually distributed. Now, for me presenting a chat about nature-driven riparian buffer zones, I hope there was of use. I know for an international audiences, but maybe I should encore with some trees with water folklore. As I say, I was going into extended time. So how about a bit of folklore? We haven't had much folklore at this time. I'm still going to go for a quarter now. And this comes from ancient Greece, but this is inspired folklore from all over Europe. And so we have the image of trees with water. I'll go back to that. And to me, this conjures up the vision of the apple trees in the garden of the Hesperides. This is in Greek. There you go. There's the Hesperides in the garden there with their apple trees tending to that. And the Hesperides they're the carers and guardians of the trees, and they lived in the water below the trees. And then they combine nymphs and daughters of the evening. Have I got them? There we go. Sprites. These are the various artists' impressions of these Hesperides. I'll get my words right, John. And some of them you may know them as sprites, or just fairy folk is another thing. So they have that amazing artistic impression of the connection of water with trees, and I think that's been the inspiration of a lot of the European folklore of the fairy folk. They come out of the water, they go up and live in trees, and that's the life that we're fed, and that's for our survival. And through Eastern Europe and parts of Cornwall, these fairy folk are known as Spriggans. We're a little bit mischievous. There's some Spriggans there. So that's an artist's impression. But closer to home, this is our local holy well. We got this bubbling well here. That's come under various names. Hag's Well is one of them. And I'm always awed by this well because you might see it in the picture. It's always bubbling away, bubbling all year round. And it's always that clear always around the year. So you can always take clean, fresh water, safe water that's been chelated with the minerals that's picked up from the underground. And I think I've got another one here. That's of the well. There's a person dedicating that with the British cross. I thought that was going to be with a mug. And by this well, there's a huge ash tree. It's hundreds of years old. That's the base of it, Marian figure beside it. And it hangs over this well, but the roots are very much served by the well and by its water's flow. Now, I do carry a passionate belief with the idea of our bodies being like individual trees. And I often imagine that we're just like trees. Our bodies are just like trees. And we have water inside us, just like the trees do. But our water is blood, of course, and our other body fluids. But I believe all of this is part of the entire collective of life, whether the water is inside us or whether the water is inside the trees. And to me, these fluids, our water, is where our memories, emotions, passions, and visions, that's where they all reside. And when our body falls, many of us call this a passing. The waters in our body have stopped, and it leaves our body, and it rejoins all of the other water again. So when I see a vintage chieftain tree by a sacred well, do I have one? There's that tree again, the ash by the well. When I see this, I instantly think of all the living beings that have rejoined the collective of that water that's come up through the well and gone up through the tree. So perhaps when we're by these sacred wells, we sense and pick up recognition of individual identities. Our psychic visions start coming forth, and we suddenly feel that these people are present with us. And that's not surprising. I feel we're picking up those memories from that water, from that tree, and enable to us to understand them. We get these lovely physical visions. That's how I believe it. And this is visions we get are of people. It might be our ancestors, but certainly people that were roaming this land, but they're now within the water sap of the tree, in the well. And all of the myth and folklore around what I've just described to me is that of trees and folklore. And there we go. We have a picture to sum that up. So I'm going to tell you what we've got coming up, but if you've got any comments, do fly them out. Now, any questions, I'll make some answers. So as I mentioned, that's if you would like to see Sarah in future in a double camera situation, there's where you could subscribe. And if you don't like PayPal, I've got this other one here that people have been using. Thank you very much for people who prefer to use their cards with a little tip at buymeacoffee.com, Nature Folklore. That's been popular lately. It all helps us along. So what's coming up, as I say, next week, starting a new series, and it's the Permaculture Living series is what's coming up. And we're starting off with some very serious stuff on that. And it's going to be this. It's a combination of practical permaculture, back to the land stuff, and also the folklore as well. So the first one is food sovereignty. Big discussion at the moment. There's a fear of food shortages with all that's going on. So there's this discussion between food sovereignty and food security. So that's next week. Very important subject. And people around Ireland are itching to get going with their gardens, sowing and planting. And even though we've got these glorious warm days, the soil is still cold. But polytunnels, greenhouses, crotch seeding and growing. And we even had Elizabeth, who's doing that, has been doing that right now while watching this show. And that's all well underway now. And many people have they've dared to put their outdoor potatoes out. I think it's a bit dodgy yet. Anyway, I would say leave that till the beginning of April in Ireland. The soil's not really warm here to get crops going yet, but it's lovely out. And soon I'll be finishing off and diving out in the south. But the first part of this 3-part edition, we're going to consider what we can do to enhance our own food sovereignty. So it's all about sustainable actions and balanced planning and a bit of folklore thrown in. So the spirit of folklore will be there to guide and drive the series along. And then on the 10th of April, we got the beginning of Biodiversity Part 1. A lot of underground stuff So this is really going to be folklore rich, because I think we need this basis of understanding, vision, sensing for our above ground permaculture to really do its thing. And so we're going to go that into depth. And so part one of that be on oh, lost the date. That'd be the 10th, won't it? Then, of course, it's Easter on the 17th. So we're going to have our usual annual Easter thing where I present a sort of storytelling session going through the folklore of the three strains of the bard, and these being the melancholy, onto the joy, and then onto the dreaming. And that will actually move into a bit of a permaculture realm as well. But that's our Easter Sunday, and I hope you enjoy that. And I also retell the whole Easter story, the whole Easter story. I tell that through the three strains of the bard, the whole resurrection story in a bardic nature folklore kind of way. And then 24th of April, come back for the next Underworld 2, about very much about the soil, the biodiversity, Underworld, and again that application with the assistance of folklore to get our permaculture gardens going. Really wonderful. So that's what's coming up with that series through April. What are you saying here? There's some comments going on here. Cliff's here, very enjoyable show. Thank you very much, Cliff, for hanging on all this time. I love the factory garden, the buffering, and thanks for the extra contribution from Anne there as well. So thank you, amazing guest today that we've had. Started off with Eileen Monahan, and then we had Anne Baldwin with a lovely poem to a series, and Edward Durand and short pieces there with his poems. And Margie with the Willow, Margie Dunn. And of course, the wonderful fairy presence of the Sarah Humble, which people have been asking to be on a show for a long time. And we got more of Sarah, as I say, on the series. I think it's the series after this. Definitely Women in Water. We have a Belton series after the permaculture. Then we're on to the Women in Water. So we'll have Sarah way back on that. If you're watching this, most of you will be watching this as an archive. Please keep the comments going if you're watching this evening and in the week, because I do look and see what you're saying, and I add comments later. Subscribe where you see the bell, and that will remind you of what's coming up on each Sunday edition. So it just leaves me to wish you a lovely, safe week full of wonder, inspiration, enchantments. And I hope you're getting glorious weather yourselves with this. I hope you got something from this. It was very sort of preachy and lectury today, but I hope you can see that through the visions of your imagination. What can be done with what you have, what's around you, and things that you might be able to locally campaign, because we all need this sanctuary. But how about that sanctuary following the rivers as well? See what can be done, because your politicians are not going to be interested. They're going to think you're a nut. But I think this is something local people can do and set the example. And they will become the teachers of the apprentices to make these buffer zones happen. And we'll have the biodiversity back to very healthy levels again. And we won't starve because the crops will be better. Our water will remain clean and get cleaner. Everything wins as far as I can see through this. So enjoy a safe week. Enjoy a wonderful week. Wonderful contemplation week. Imagination. Wishing you lots of fantastic visions, imaginations, and dreams. And that's really all I've got for you today. And it did take 2 hours. So thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody. And thank you for your contributions. That's all I have. Bye.